The garage door was still rolling up when I saw the pink suitcase on my driveway. Not mine. Not anything I recognized. It was one of those hard shell rolling things with a luggage tag dangling off the handle, and even from inside my car I could read the name printed on it in block letters. My mother-in-law's name? Sitting on my driveway like she'd been waiting for the Uber that would never come. I had just pulled in from a 4-day stretch in Denver. My laptop bag was still on the passenger seat. My hair was flat from the plane, and I had a pretzel crumb on my blazer that I'd been picking at since baggage claim. I'd called my husband twice from the rental return, and he hadn't picked up either time, which wasn't unusual for him on a Thursday afternoon, but the suitcase made it suddenly feel very usual in a different way. Like a setup. Like the punchline of a joke I hadn't heard yet. I parked. Got out. Walked past the suitcase without touching it because something in my gut said, don't touch it, take a picture first. So I took a picture. Then I unlocked my front door. The smell hit me first. Lavender. The cheap kind? The plug-in kind? The kind I had specifically thrown out of this house 3 months ago because it gave me migraines. Then I saw the shoes. 4 pairs of women's shoes lined up by the entry, none of them mine. Then the coat on my hook. A beige raincoat I'd seen exactly one time before, at Easter, hanging in my mother-in-law's hallway in Tampa. I think I said something out loud. I don't remember what. Probably just my husband's name, like a question. She came around the corner from my kitchen holding a mug. My mug. The one with the little ceramic bee on it that my grandmother gave me before she died. She was wearing a robe. A robe. In my house. At 3 in the afternoon. Her hair was wet like she'd just used my shower. "Oh," she said. "You're back early." I just stood there. My carry-on was still in my hand. I think I was waiting for her to say something that would make this make sense. Like she was watering the plants or letting in the cable guy, but instead, she took a sip from my grandmother's mug and said, "I've already cleared out the office. Your husband said it was fine. I needed somewhere to land for a while, and you two have all this space." The office. The office where I work. The office with my second monitor and my filing cabinet and the framed photo of my dad from his retirement party. Her saying she cleared it out the way you'd say you cleared out a junk drawer. I asked her how long she'd been here. She said since Sunday. Today was Thursday. I asked her where my desk was. She said it was in the garage. She said it like that was a normal thing to do with another adult woman's desk. I didn't yell. I want to say I yelled because that would feel better in the retelling. But what I actually did was set my carry-on down very carefully like it was full of eggs and walk past her down the hallway. The door to my office was open. The room was a bedroom now. Her bedroom. There was a quilt on a folded futon I had never seen in my life. There was a cluster of porcelain figurines on the windowsill. There was a framed photo of her and my husband as a toddler in what used to be my work desk. I went back to the living room. She was on my couch now, feet up on my coffee table, watching some courtroom show on my TV with my grandmother's mug balanced on her stomach. I called my husband. He picked up on the third ring, sounding annoyed before I'd even said anything. "Why is your mother in our house?" "Oh." "You're home." "Yeah, I meant to text you." "Why is your mother in our house?" He sighed. The sigh I had come to know very well over the previous year. The sigh that said he was tired of me being unreasonable about reasonable things. She needed a place. The apartment she was in didn't work out. I told her she could stay in the office until she gets back on her feet. It's not a big deal. You're traveling all the time anyway. I said, "You moved my desk to the garage." "It's a desk." "Calm down." I said, "How long is she staying?" He said, "I don't know, as long as she needs." I said, "I work from that office when I'm not traveling. You know that." He said, and I will remember this exact wording until the day I die, "Look, I'm the one paying the mortgage on this place. I think I get to decide who sleeps where. She's family. You're being cold." I want to pause here because this is the part where the whole thing started turning, even if I didn't know it yet. He said he was the one paying the mortgage. He said it casually, like a fact, like sky is blue. The mortgage on our house was $4,200 a month. He paid $2,000 of it. I paid the other $2,200 plus the property taxes, plus the insurance, plus both car payments, plus our groceries, plus our utilities, plus, until 6 months ago, his student loan minimums because he said he was overwhelmed at work and could I just float him until bonus season? bonus season had come and gone. The student loans were back on him. The rest of it was still on me. But somewhere in his head, he was the one paying the mortgage. He had said it out loud to me, while his mother sat on my couch with my grandmother's mug, and he meant it. I hung up. I stood in my own kitchen and looked at a stranger's coffee cake on my counter, and I felt something shift. Not anger exactly. Something quieter, the way a door clicks closed. Let me back up. I should tell you who I am, because otherwise this is just a story about a couch. I'm 31. I do enterprise software sales for a healthcare tech company, the kind of job where I'm on the road 2 weeks a month and on Zoom the other 2. I make better money than my husband. By a margin, he and I had stopped discussing about a year and a half into our marriage because it had become, in his words, a thing. I have a degree in math and a sister who's a pediatric oncologist and parents who built a chain of orthodontic practices across 3 states from absolutely nothing. My dad started by cleaning offices at night while he finished dental school. My mom did the books at the kitchen table after my sister and I went to bed. They are the most decent, hard-working, unflashy people I have ever met, and they raised me to assume that whatever I needed, I would earn. I met my husband at a friend's barbecue when I was 28. He was funny. He was charming. He had a job in commercial real estate that he described as doing well, and a smile that made my friends elbow me in the ribs. We dated for 10 months. He proposed in Charleston. I said yes. The house was supposed to be the start of everything. Here's what I didn't tell him until very late in the engagement because I had grown up watching what happens to women who lead with money. My parents owned a house in our city. A nice one, in a neighborhood we couldn't have otherwise afforded as a young couple. They wanted us to have it. Not for free. My dad was very clear about that because he said free things make people soft, but at a number that was generous. $2,100 a month, when comparable rentals on the same street were going for $3,500. They would put it in our name jointly after 5 years if we wanted to stay. It was by any measure an extraordinary gift. The first time I told my fiancé about the house, he was thrilled. The second time after he'd been there and walked the rooms and seen the pool, his thrill curdled into something else. He started asking questions like why we had to pay anything at all if her dad was so well off. He said his mother had raised him alone with nothing, and his version of a parent helping you out was a Costco run, not a house. He said it like he was being humble. He wasn't. He was building a case. By the time the wedding came, he had negotiated my father down to $1,900. My father, who could have rented that house to 2 software engineers for $3,800 without breaking a sweat, my father said yes because he loved me and because he said very quietly to me one night while we were doing dishes, "I want to give him enough rope. We'll see what he does with it." I should have heard that sentence. I heard the words. I didn't hear it. The first year of marriage was fine. The second year, his mother started visiting. 3 days at a time, then 5, then a week. She was, to be fair, not a screaming villain. She was a smiler. She would sit at my kitchen island and smile while telling me my chicken was a little dry. She would smile while folding my laundry into thirds because halves were apparently slovenly. She would smile while telling my husband in front of me that his shirts hadn't been ironed properly in months. And was I just very busy at work, or did I not see the point? He never defended me. Not once. Not when she said it was a shame I traveled so much. A husband needs a wife at home. Not when she said her own mother would have been horrified to see a kitchen sink with dishes in it overnight. Not when she rearranged my pantry while I was on a sales trip and threw out my olive oil because she said the bottle looked old. I started traveling more. I told myself it was for the commission. It wasn't entirely for the commission. Now we're back to me standing in my kitchen looking at a strange coffee cake while my mother-in-law watched television in my living room. I went to the garage. My desk was there, shoved against the back wall behind the recycling bins. Someone, probably my husband, had stacked my monitors on the floor. The framed picture of my dad was face down on the concrete. The glass was cracked. "I want to tell you," I screamed. "I want to tell you," I picked up the picture and stormed back inside and threw it at someone. What I did was sit down on the concrete floor of my own garage and cry for about 90 seconds. Then I got up, picked up the picture, brushed the glass off, and went back into the house. I told her she had until the next morning to be out. She laughed at me. She actually laughed. She said, "Honey, I know you've had a long day, but this isn't your decision to make. My son is the head of this household. He's the one with the income. You should rest. Take a bath." We can talk about this when you're calmer. I said, take your suitcase off my driveway. She said, he told me about your little arrangement with your father. The discount, that's sweet of your dad. But this is our home now. My son's home. We've been talking about how it makes more sense for me to be here helping out while you're away so much. A house this size shouldn't sit empty. I said it again. Off the driveway. Out of my house. By morning. She picked up her phone and called my husband, right in front of me. Said, she's home and she's being hysterical. Can you talk to her? I packed a bag, I packed it fast, I took my dad's picture. I took my grandmother's mug, prying it out of her hand on my way past the couch, which I'm not proud of, but I'm not sorry about either. I took my laptop, my passport, my jewelry box, and the little folder of paperwork I keep in the safe in our closet. The safe was open. She had been in the safe. I didn't have time to think about that yet. I drove to my parents' house. I didn't call ahead. My mother opened the door, took one look at me, and stepped aside. I walked past her, set my bag down, and sat at their kitchen table, and that's where my dad found me 20 minutes later, still in my flat plain hair and my pretzel-crumbed blazer. He sat down across from me. Tell me, he said. I told him. All of it, the mother-in-law, the office, the desk in the garage, the mortgage comment, the remark about the discount, the safe being open. I told him about the smiles and the ironing and the olive oil and the way my husband had stopped asking me about my day and started talking to me like I was his administrative assistant. He listened. My dad is a good listener. He doesn't interrupt and he doesn't fill silences just to fill them. When I was done, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I expected this. I asked him what he meant. He said, I had a feeling about your husband. I had it the first time I met him. I hoped I was wrong. I'm sorry I wasn't. But I want you to know I've been ready for this for about 3 years. He got up, walked to his office, and came back with a folder. In the folder was the lease on the house. My lease. I had never actually seen the lease. We had moved in and started paying, and I had assumed there was paperwork somewhere because there always is with my dad. But I had never read it. The lease was in my name only. Just mine, not my husband's. My dad had insisted on that when we signed 3 years ago. He had told me at the time, it's just cleaner this way for the books. I had believed him because I was 28 and in love and didn't want to make my fiancé feel weird about not being on a piece of paper. My dad had been thinking 3 steps ahead. For 3 years. He looked at me and said, here's what we can do if you want to do it. Tell me when you're ready. I went upstairs to my old bedroom and slept for 14 hours. When I came down the next morning, my mom had made eggs and coffee, and she didn't ask me any questions. My dad was reading the paper. I sat down, I drank some coffee, I ate some eggs. And I said, okay, I'm ready. What followed was the most organized week of my life. Day 1, my dad made 2 phone calls. One was to his attorney, a woman named Dolores who has been handling his business affairs for 20 years, and who I have always been a little afraid of. The other was to the property management company that technically managed the house on paper, even though my dad owned the LLC that owned the company. He told them to issue a formal notice that the existing rental rate was being terminated. The unit would be released at market rate effective the first of the month. Market rate after some checking on comparable properties was $3,800. He decided to round up $4,100, plus a deposit equal to 2 months of rent, to be paid by the existing tenant of record, which was me, or vacated within 14 days. Day 2. I called HR at my company and told them I needed to relocate my home address temporarily and that I would be working for my parents for the next month. They didn't blink. I just closed the largest deal of the quarter. I could have asked them for a pony. Day 3. Dolores filed paperwork to confirm the lease, attached the rate change notice, and opened a parallel folder in case of eviction proceedings. She also drafted divorce papers. She drafted them quickly. She told me she'd had a feeling about this one too. Day 4. My husband called me 16 times. I didn't answer. He left voicemails. The first 3 were angry. The next 4 were confused. The next 5 were begging. The last 4 were angry again. I listened to one of them. He said his mother had been very upset by my behavior and he thought I owed her an apology. I deleted the rest. Day 5. I went to the house with my dad and Dolores. My husband answered the door in sweatpants. His mother was behind him in the same robe. They were not expecting us. Dolores introduced herself, handed him an envelope. walked him through the contents calmly, the way you would walk a child through a math problem. The new lease, the new rate, the 2-month deposit, the 14-day window, the fact that he's 14-day window, the fact that he was not and had never been a tenant of record. He laughed. He actually laughed. He said something like, "This is ridiculous. You can't just raise the rent on us." Dolores said, "Sir, you are not a tenant. There is no rent to raise on you. Your wife is the tenant. The terms of her lease are being modified. She has the option to sign the new lease at the new rate or to terminate. She has chosen to terminate." His mother stepped forward and started to say something. Dolores looked at her the way a teacher looks at a kid talking during a test. His mother stopped talking. I will tell you what I saw in his face in that moment because it's the part I think about most. It wasn't grief. It wasn't shock at losing me. It was math. He was doing math. He was calculating, in real time, what the next $4,100 a month meant for a man whose actual income, I would later learn from his bank statements during the divorce, was about half of what he had told me. He was calculating the deposit. He was calculating his mother's rent in Tampa, which he had also apparently been paying. He was calculating his car. He was calculating his life without me underwriting it. He went pale. I said, "I also brought these." I handed him the divorce papers. He said, wait, this is crazy. This is an overreaction. Let's just talk." I said, "We talked. You told me you paid the mortgage." He said, "I just meant." I said, "I know what you meant." His mother started crying. Loud, performative crying. The kind where you make sure everyone hears it. She said something about how could I do this to her at her age? Where was she supposed to go? Didn't I have any compassion? Dolores asked her very politely whether she was a tenant on the lease. She was not. Dolores reminded her that meant she had no standing to be in the conversation. Dolores has a way of saying things like that. We left. Day 6 and 7. They tried everything. He sent flowers to my parents' house. My mother put them in the trash without taking them out of the wrapper. He sent his mother to my office, which was a stunning miscalculation because I worked from home or from a hotel and there was no office for her to go to. He emailed my dad a long letter about how he had been stressed at work and his mother's situation had gotten on top of him and he was committed to being a better husband. My dad forwarded it to Dolores without reading it. He texted me a picture of our wedding day and I just looked at it for a while and then I deleted it. On day 12, his mother left. She moved into a long-term stay motel out by the airport. He stayed at the house alone for 2 more days, hoping, I think, that I would change my mind. On day 14, Dolores' office sent the eviction notice. On day 15, he was gone. I went back to the house alone. I walked through it room by room. The lavender plugins were everywhere, in every outlet like she had been planning to colonize the place by smell. I pulled them all out. I bagged them up. I threw them away. I went into my office. The futon was still there. The figurines were still there. The framed picture of him as a toddler was still on what used to be my desk. I packed all of it into boxes. I put the boxes in the garage where my desk had been. I put my desk back. I plugged my monitors back in. I sat down in my own chair in my own office and I cried for the second time. But it was a different kind of crying. The relieved kind. The kind that means a thing is done. The divorce moved fast. He didn't have the money to fight it, which was a sentence I could not have imagined writing 6 months earlier, but which turned out to be entirely true. We had no children. We had been married just under 3 years. I kept what was mine, which was almost everything. He got his car, his clothes, and the contents of his side of the closet. The lease on the house went back to its original rate, and I stayed. I heard things after, the way you hear things. He moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in a complex by the highway. His mother moved in with him. My mutual friends with his side started to fade out the way mutual friends do after a divorce, but a few of them gave me updates, partly out of loyalty and partly because the updates were just too good not to share. He had to sell his car. He went into some debt to cover his mother's medical things, which I had paid for previously without really registering that I was doing it. They fought. They fought a lot, apparently. The thing about a son who's been raised to be the head of a household by a mother who really wants to be the head of a household is that with no buffer between them, they discovered they had only ever been a team because of the buffer. The buffer was me. I am told he is dating again. I am told it is not going well. I want to tell you the part that is the easiest to say and the hardest to mean because it took me a long time to actually feel it. I don't wish him harm. I really don't. What I wish when I think about him, which is less often than you would imagine, is that he understands. Not that he apologizes, not that he tries to come back. Just that, somewhere quiet in his own head, he gets it. Gets that he was handed a kind, stable, loving woman with a stable, loving family that was prepared to help him, and that the thing he chose to do with all of that was to try to take more than was given. I hope he understands that. I'm not optimistic. I live in the house alone now. My office is back the way I like it. My grandmother's mug lives on the shelf above my coffee maker, and I use it almost every morning, and I think about her almost every time. I bought a dog, a big stupid yellow one that sleeps with his head on my feet while I'm on conference calls. I travel a little less. I see my parents more. I had dinner with my dad last week, and I asked him, a little nervously, whether he had really known 3 years ago, whether the lease in my name only had really been about that. He said, "Honey, I didn't know it would be him specifically. I just know how the world works. I wanted to make sure that whatever happened, you'd land on your feet. That's all." I asked him if he was disappointed in me, for not seeing it sooner, for staying as long as I did. He said, "You stayed because you're loyal. That's not a flaw. We just had to make sure loyalty didn't cost you everything." I'm 31. I'm starting over. I have a house I love and a job I'm good at, and a family that didn't flinch when I showed up at their door with a pretzel crumb on my blazer and a story I couldn't quite finish. I don't know if I'll get married again. I don't know if I want to. What I do know, what I know now in a way I didn't know before, is the difference between someone who treats your generosity like a starting line and someone who treats it like a starting line. My family treated me like a starting line. He treated me like a finish line. Once you can tell the difference, you can't unsee it. If you're listening to this and any of it sounded familiar, I want to say one thing to you. The smallest sentence he ever said to me, the one I didn't react to at the time, was the one that told me everything. I'm the one paying the mortgage. He believed it. He had revised the entire history of our finances in his own head until it was true to him. People who can do that to numbers can do it to anything. They can do it to your office. They can do it to your mother's mug. They can do it to your sense of yourself. The day you hear that sentence, in whatever form it comes in your own life, is the day to start paying attention. Not the day to start fighting. Just the day to start fighting. Just the day to start paying attention. That's all I've got. Take care of yourselves. And if your dad ever insists on a piece of paperwork being cleaner this way for the books, sign it. Sign it and don't ask questions. Some men know things. Mine did. I think about that pretzel crumb on my blazer more often than I should. It's the smallest detail of the whole story, and it's the one that comes back to me when I'm trying to make sense of how I got there. A grown woman with a stable career, a closing quarter bonus in her account, a dog she didn't yet have, walking into her own home and finding a stranger in her grandmother's mug. The thing nobody tells you about losing yourself in a marriage is that it doesn't happen all at once. It happens one folded shirt at a time, one smiled criticism at a time, one sentence like, "I'm the one paying the mortgage" at a time, until the woman who used to know her own bank statements doesn't even argue back. What I learned, sitting at my parents' kitchen table that night, is that kindness without clarity is just a slow leak. I had been kind. I had been generous. I had paid more than my share and asked for less than I deserved, and I had told myself this was love. It wasn't love. It was a habit I picked up because pushing back felt unkind. My husband mistook my kindness for unlimited supply. His mother mistook it for permission, and I let them because correcting them felt like a bigger failure than being walked over. Here's what I would say to a younger version of myself, sitting at that table with a flat, plain hair and shaking hands. Generosity is a gift you give from a position of strength. The moment it starts coming from a position of fear, it stops being generosity and starts being rent on a relationship that was already overdue. You are allowed to be loved without paying for it. You are allowed to have a desk in your own house. You are allowed to throw a stranger's lavender plugins in the trash. None of these things are unkind. They are the cost of being a whole person. My father knew this 3 years before I did. He didn't lecture me. He didn't argue with my husband. He just put a piece of paperwork in my name and waited. That, more than anything else, is the lesson I carry forward. The smartest people in my life didn't try to talk me out of my mistakes. They quietly built me a way back from them. There is a kind of strength that looks like patience. There is a kind of love that looks like a folder you keep in a drawer for 3 years, hoping you'll never need it, ready in case you do. I am not bitter about what happened. I'm not even angry most days. What I am is awake. I notice things now. I notice when someone takes more than they give and calls it partnership. I notice when generosity is being treated like a starting line versus a finish line. I notice the small sentences, the throwaway ones, that tell you exactly what someone believes about you when they think you're not really listening. Pay attention to the small sentences. Build the folder. Trust the people who treat your kindness like a beginning, not a destination. That is the whole story.